Hey everyone, I've got Code Bunny here, which is now available on Steam. It was released previously on itch.io, so if you're interested in this game, at the end of the review, just hop on down to the comment section. I'll have a pinned comment with a link to both the Steam page and itch.io. And basically what this is an action platformer. And its inspiration is pretty clear with its visual style and like the aesthetics as far as its music and art go. And I would say that's most likely like the Super Nintendo era of like Mega Man X titles, or perhaps maybe even just Inti Creates games in general. And I like the pixel art and the character design and the personalities and the dialogue really come through for each of the characters that you talk to. And if you play the story mode of this, because you don't have to if you don't want to, they have a few different modes you can play. When you first load up the game, you have two different characters to choose from. There's Axel and also Hazel. And then each character, there's either a story mode, which has all of the story bits, and there's also a classic mode, which would play like a classic style NES or Super Nintendo era Mega Man game where you really don't have any story. It's kind of just the level to level gameplay. So I tried both characters. I completed the game with Hazel. I only played a few levels with Axel. And what I'll say is they are completely different than one another, and each of their campaigns plays different as a result. So Hazel is more of like your sword wielding, dashing, like ninja like mobility character, whereas Axel plays more like an interactive top, and you just kind of like bounce around between enemies. And Axel to me played a bit clunky, and I didn't like playing as Axel like at all, whereas playing as Hazel was really enjoyable and satisfying. And maybe that's on me. Maybe I just didn't fully grasp how to play Axel correctly. But from my playtime with Axel, I did not like playing that particular character, unfortunately. But the great thing about this game is that since their campaigns are separate, you don't have to. Maybe you might enjoy Axel more than Hazel, and that's okay. It's player preference. For me personally, I didn't like Axel, so I didn't have to play that character. I played through as Hazel. It's not one of those games where you have to play as both characters to get through the game or get through the story mode. They're completely separate. So I really appreciated that, because if I had to play Axel, it would have negatively impacted my review on this game for sure, because that was just not my cup of tea. So after you select your character, you select your mode, you dive right in. It gives you a tutorial right in the beginning, so whichever character you're playing, it'll teach you the fundamentals of their kit, and that's a really good thing, because this game's a bit unique, at least for me, in that it really wants you to focus on the combat, but using it as mobility. You don't even really have to eliminate the enemies as you play through this. And in actuality, I don't necessarily think that it even wants you to do that, because it places an emphasis on speed and setting fast times to get better ranks. And so by going through quickly versus stopping and eliminating each enemy, that's how you accomplish that. Playing through each of the levels, you can tell that a lot of effort was placed into having the enemies in a way to really optimize being speedy and zipping right through these levels. A lot of them I got through in like a couple minutes, unless I got to a boss and kind of struggled and took a few tries. There are checkpoints placed pretty generously, so if you make a mistake and fall in a pit, or you just meet your demise in general, you'll respawn and not lose too much progress and be able to get right back into it. And the same goes for the boss fights. You always get a checkpoint right before one of the bosses at the end of the level. So playing through with Hazel was honestly really enjoyable, and the game controls really responsively and really great. It basically has the functionality of like the Super Nintendo, where I was using L1 and R1, and then, you know, the face buttons, and then the thumbstick or the D-pad for mobility. So expect that Super Nintendo era of control. There are different gimmicks and hazards and things that'll be introduced as you play through this. Even though it has a shorter runtime, they do bring in quite a bit of variety to the level designs, and it felt interesting for the entirety of my playthrough. I would say as far as the difficulty goes, because there aren't multiple difficulty levels, it is pretty fair. I would say it's fair. The bulk of the difficulty, at least for me, came from the boss fights, which were really enjoyable. I didn't have any trouble with any of the bosses to the point where I was really frustrated, but the bulk of my deaths in this game did come from the boss fights, as I had to learn their patterns and the best way to kind of counter their attack or parry certain attacks and things like that. Once you complete the game, you'll unlock a third mode other than the story in the classic mode, which is basically like a time trial mode where you could just zip through the game as quickly as you can, all in one go, pretty seamless. And this needs to be unlocked by clearing the game first with each character. Each character has their own set of save files. I had fun with this, even though I'm not like a speedrunner. And I think this would be a really fun game to see played at like GDQ or something like that, where you have a really talented speedrunner just zipping through this. Because I'm sure like a speedrunner playing through this and what my gameplay looks like are probably two completely different things. My gameplay style is more like slow and methodical. I usually like to take my time. I don't usually like to have pressure or be timed. And you're not in this. You're not timed, because you do need to use your mobility and your momentum from your attacks to like clear big gaps and things like that. Something that I haven't mentioned yet that I did really enjoy in the game too was the music. They used FamiTracker for the soundtrack. FamiTracker does a really great job of simulating the NES era of soundtracks, and this one immediately to me when I was listening to it, I was just thinking Mega Man. I don't know if that was the intent or not, but that's kind of the vibe it gave me. And I'm not at all saying that it's as good as like Mega Man 2 soundtrack, but it was really good, and I enjoyed listening to the different tracks as I played through this. Code Bunny is a really fun game, and I'm glad that I had the opportunity to play through it. And I'm really glad that I wasn't forced to play the character that just didn't suit my playstyle. I think having two different characters that play completely different means that even if a particular player like myself only enjoys one of the two, they can still find one that is fun for them, and that's a great thing. The developer did make me aware that they do have an update coming for this in early 2025 to add in some more content. And it's a free update, so this isn't going to be like paid DLC or anything like that. So do expect some additional content to come if you decide to pick this up in the near future. I appreciate you watching this review. I hope you found it helpful. If you did, make sure to like the video, comment below if you have any questions, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. But until next time, have a good one.